Director Miller, will you lead us in prayer?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Please bow your heads and pray with me. Lord God, we come to you on this beautiful morning, thanking you for this day that you give us, and we thank you for all the blessings that you give us every day. We ask that you watch over our annual meeting and guide our hearts and minds to make decisions that are in the best interest of our members. We ask that you bless the selection and its results. We ask that you watch over and protect all of our men and women in uniform who work to keep us safe and free every day. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Director Seal, pledge allegiance.
Ladies and gentlemen, face the flag and repeat with me. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. All right, so for the annual meeting, we need 10 members. So if you're a member, can you please raise your hand, including the board? All right, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. I have 22 members in presence. So I do believe we are good for the quorum. As a reminder that audio and video recorders are in use, and that much later on today, we'll have an open forum at the end of the meeting. So first up is the approval of the minutes from the January 19, 2021, the annual AM and PM meeting minutes and transcripts. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at them? Any comments?
I do have a question. I don't understand why we wait a whole year to approve those, because I have no idea if they're correct or not. I mean, based upon the transcripts, you can tell. But, I mean, I don't remember what happened a year ago.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I was even here because I wasn't a member of the board at the time.
Yeah.
Is that in the bylaws someplace, or why don't we approve them in the February meeting?
Historically, the annual meeting minutes have been approved at the next annual meeting. And I can't tell you for sure if it's a bylaws thing or just a common practice that we've done, but that's been the practice for many years.
Yeah, and that's a good. I think that's a question that we've kind of all had. So I think the next board, maybe that'll be something to do in their board visioning of solidifying that very question. Is that something that?
Let me ask the lawyer.
To the lawyer, whether or not
Would
you're
it be legal
prepared to
for us
speak.
to change that at some point to make an approval at the next regular meeting of the board?
Correct. The approval in the minutes is the direction of the board. It's not
Okay.
designated in the bylaws
Okay.
as to the date of the approval.
All right, fine.
Great.
I'm
So
going to abstain from voting for the approval.
I make a motion that we approve them as submitted.
okay, I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Those abstain?
I abstain.
Okay. All right. Motion carries. All right. We're on to the annual budget. Dr. Peavy.
Mr. President and board members, you have in your packet a copy of the 2022 annual budget that was proposed back in November, for the board in November, December, and we need to formally approve that with this board for the 2022 year.
All right. Thank you, sir. Board, any discussions or comments of the annual budget?
I'd just like to point out for anyone that wasn't at our December meeting where we went over this budget, we were able to implement a budget for this year that even with all the costs that have gone up across the board, we won't have a rate increase to our members.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I move to approve the budget, 2022 budget as presented.
All right. Mr. Thiel moved to approve. Do I have a second?
Yep, I'll second.
Mr. Campbell, second. Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Very well. We were on to the 2022 election board of directors. Dr. Beebe.
Mr. President and Board, last Wednesday, there was a meeting of the canvassing board that was appointed by the board to review the various objects and subject matters as it pertains to the election. I would ask our legal counsel, Mr. Dunaway, to have a discussion on that meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Beebe. Board members and members of the corporation, the canvassing board, which comprised Dr. Peavy as the CEO, myself as the board counsel, and Director Miller, who was elected by the board, met at the direction of the board to review both the election procedures and the information that had come in. Before I go into my report, I do want to thank publicly the Supervisor of Election for Santa Rosa County, Ms. Tappy Blaine, and her staff and volunteers who are here. I learned this morning that Ms. Tappy has personally been here for 17 years conducting the corporation's election on a volunteer basis, and maybe there's a long-time employee who actually has been here longer.
Miss Phyllis.
Ms. Phyllis has been here even longer than that. So we do a thank you, and we appreciate your services. It makes for the corporation's election the integrity of that. We appreciate it. Members, I want to just review the corporation operates, of course, according to its bylaws and the direction and policies of the board. Its bylaws in Article 7 provide for the meeting of the members. The meeting of the members only occurs annually. It always is designated in January. It is an important meeting. It is your water company. But I do want to just point out a couple of things that the canvassing board reviewed and that bear on us here today. Again, in Article 7, Section 1, it is designated that the annual meeting of the corporation shall be held in January of each year, and we have met that requirement. In Section 3, a notice of the annual meeting and any of the special meetings of the members is to be provided. And the deadline for that is that should be provided no less than 10 and no more than 50 days prior to the meeting. That notice was accurately and timely submitted, and it bears on something that I'll be discussing here in just a bit. It states that such notice shall state the hour, the day, and the place and the purpose of the meeting. This is the first time, as I am aware, that the meeting has occurred at the club at Hidden Creek. As many of you members know, that is because of the extensive renovation that's being done to the corporate headquarters, which made us meeting in that room we were unable to do that. That notice, we met that requirement also. Now, in Section 5 is the pertinent section for both the canvassing board and for our election here today. Section 5 of Article 7 of the bylaws of the corporation state that each member, and directors, I've had copies of the bylaws for you so that you can follow along. Each member shall have only one vote, and the vote of each member shall be equal to that of every other member. Voting by proxy shall be permitted, but it is required that 10 members of the corporation must be present in person at any annual meeting to constitute a quorum for the transaction of the business. As you who are here present have seen, we have over 10 members of the corporation, and therefore we have met the quorum for the annual meeting, and the voting may continue. It is indicated that in Section 6 that the directors of the corporation shall be elected at this annual meeting, and no cumulative voting shall be allowed. I do want to point out, and we have already scheduled, that in Section 7, the Board of Directors shall meet within 10 days after the annual election and shall elect a president and a vice president. That meeting has been scheduled and will be followed accordingly. Members, I want to remind you that the canvassing board is not covered in the bylaws, but the canvassing board was created by you as a policy decision to administer your election. The canvassing board's instructions are only, and its authority is only derived from the authority that you gave us, and we were simply to ensure that the election was carried out in accordance with your direction. As I indicated, the notice which was required by Section 3 of Article 7 was approved by this board in September. You approved both the content of the notice and it directed your CEO and staff to send it out. I want to remind you that as part of that was the notice of the annual meeting and a request for a proxy ballot. In that document, and it was Exhibit E to your package, which you approved in September, there was a notice. This was dated 17 November of 2021. It went to the members. It explained the process, where we were going to have the meeting here today, the time of the meeting, how to that you had the opportunity to request a proxy, an absentee ballot, and it gave instructions on how corporations could vote. As you know, members can include both individual household members. It also can include corporations. Obviously, a corporation can only vote through its duly designated representative, whomever that is, and in order to accurately determine who that is, you had in your notice, Exhibit A, an important notice. That's how you labeled it. It was at the end of the signature line on page 2, and the important notice read, all voting corporations must provide an authorization letter or resolution which states who will be its voting representative. The authorization letter or resolution must be signed by a corporate officer and submitted to the Holly Navarre Water System, Inc. by 4 p.m. on January the 7th, 2022. Those corporations that do not provide this information will not be allowed to vote on January 18, 2022. So, members, directors, when your canvassing board met, we had those instructions before us, and we reviewed those that the information that we had received. I report to you that you had a fairly low request for absentee ballots when compared to recent past history, or so staff alerted the canvassing board. That's not good or bad, it's just a data point that I just point out. You had 3 members who submitted a proper proxy, and those proxies were validated by your canvassing board. You had 6 corporate authorizations following the important notice at the bottom of the notice, who submitted their corporate authorization letters timely, and those were verified by your canvassing board. You had 1 request for a corporate designation or a corporate designation which was received untimely by your canvassing board. That is, it was received after 4 p.m. on January the 7th of 2022. I also want to inform you that staff briefed the canvassing board and let us know that in reviewing data from past elections, it did appear that there were other corporations who presented their proxies on the day of election. It does appear that in past years, those who presented a corporate designation on the day of the election were allowed to vote. Your canvassing board could not make a decision on whether that was authorized or not authorized because we don't have that authority. That is the authority of this board. So your canvassing board reports that of the 6 corporate representation authorizations that we had, we approved. We have 1 that was untimely. We're reporting that to you for your action. And we are asking you to let staff know, and Ms. Tappy's staff, who will be running the election, will you, and this is the question for you for action here this morning, will you conduct the election according to the notice that you sent out, or will you allow a corporate designation that is presented here today to be counted and to vote in today's election? One other information before your discussion on this item, and that is staff reviewed your notices, and this important notice has been included in every annual notice, at least back into 2008. And we found evidence in 1999 of board discussion of how this process should play out, and it was in the way it is now. That is, a corporate, the corporation must designate a proxy, and that proxy has to get to the staff before the election. So with that information, I'm available to answer any questions. The point to you for decision this morning is, shall staff conduct the election as has been done in the past, or shall they conduct the election according to your important notice in your notice?
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Donovan?
No, sir, thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, board, discussion?
So as I understand it, you're saying it's been there since 2008. Previous boards just didn't enforce what they had written. Is that what you're saying?
That is what it appears to be. That it does appear that corporations have presented proxies during the election, which were then counted towards the
And
election.
I'm assuming that we want it before today in order for us to validate it as a true corporation, and there's no way for the election staff to determine today that it's a valid letter or certification from that company.
Yes, sir. So the only thing that the corporation can and actually should do is that when a corporate proxy is submitted, it's not a question of who the person is that the corporation selects. They can select anyone. The question is, are they a member of the water board of the company? And all they do is, let's say they get XYZ LLC, and it designates John Doe to vote for that. All staff does is look to verify that XYZ LLC is actually a member of the water board, that is, has a water tap and is paying their bill.
John Doe does not have to be.
John Doe, we don't know who that is, and it's not our determination as to who the company chose to vote. It could be anyone. I mean, anyone the corporation chose.
In my mind, the rule's a rule. We put it out. It's been at whether previous boards enforced it or not. That's on them. In my mind, if it's out there, if it's a rule, we had 6 that went by the directive, the letter.
We did.
So we had 6 so why would we penalize those 6 that did to cater to those that don't? Maybe they don't even want to vote. So I say we go by what was written on the letter, and if those 6 are good, if they haven't provided it by the 7th of the deadline, then we say no.
So how many corporations on average in the past are we talking about? Is it 5, 10, 100?
We know from staff's report to the canvassing board and directors understand what they had to do to actually find this. So they went through the actual ballots to look at the corporation proxies. And they had gone through they had gotten to M by the date of the canvassing board, and we had identified 15, I think, corporations that voted in the last election with a corporate designation submitted on the day of the election.
Okay.
I'll say, as a member of the canvassing committee, this is the first time I've served on that committee, and if anything came out of that, it's that we've got to do a better job of our cleaning up these procedures. We don't want to create a situation that denies a member the right to vote as per the bylaws. And so my concern is, if someone has, if you look at any holder of a member certificate is a member, and if you look at who is on the member certificate, there are 2 signatures at the bottom of it. That corporation is the member, but it's got the president and the secretary there. And I think it might have been the case in the past, I don't know this, that staff didn't necessarily require a corporate authorization, but they may have went back and looked to see who the certificate holder is, who is the member. Do we know that this person is the manager of this corporation? And they've allowed them to vote. They don't, staff's intent was to not deny a proper member the right to vote on election day. And so we as a board have created this requirement, I mean, years ago, going back years, that they submit a corporate resolution by the 7th. But is that creating a situation where someone that, maybe didn't get the notice, didn't read the notice, whatever, shows up to vote on election day and they're being denied the right to vote as a proper member? Their name's on the member certificate for that corporation. So I don't think it goes anything on the way that, the election was handled in the past. I think the staff was trying to do right by the members and allow them their right to vote. So I think we as a board have to clean that up and either make it very evident that, because it's at the bottom of that notice, and I think we have to make it very evident that this is the procedure and it's going to be enforced. In prior years, it hasn't. So I can tell you, if we decide to hold to our procedures that are on that letter, you have a lot of upset members. They'll be saying, oh, well, I've done it this way for the last 5 years or whatever. And so, yeah, it's in black and white. We can point that out to them, but I can promise you, they're not going to be happy if they're not allowed to vote.
Okay. Joe,
Well, no, I was going to say, we're not denying the right to vote. They've had 45 days to comply from the notice when it went out. I'm sorry if they refuse to read or don't read the whole writing, but the fact that previous boards or staff didn't enforce it, if it's the rule, and it's been that way since '08, I pride myself at least on, we make the rules, we enforce the rules, and the rules are rules, and I'm sorry if your feelings are hurt, but read the whole letter next time and move on. So that's mine.
okay. Anything else from the board?
It's not going to look good if their name's on that member certificate, they signed it, and we're telling them you can't vote.
Well, I'm going to go to the lawyer because it's on that letter, and we said this is procedures. We're good legally, right? It's not like this will throw any sort of.
So would it be an illegal election for you to follow your rules of the notice? The answer is yes. With regards to Director Miller's comments, I believe that based on the report to the canvassing, well, I know based on the report of the staff to the canvassing board, that the scenario that Director Miller was discussing is the scenario that in the past election has been followed. That is, remember that, as I said earlier, a corporation can designate anyone to vote its one vote. John Doe, someone who's not even affiliated. However, it does appear that in past elections that the person or persons who showed up with a corporate designation were the people who were on the membership certificate. That is, the LLC was the person, either a sole proprietor or something like that, and a company in which the president is there, and it's the president who's there. The staff was able to verify that the company has a member, the company's president is Mr. Jones, and it's Mr. Jones who's standing before them to vote. So that is the situation. This is a procedure, which is a legal procedure that the board put in place and duly authorized. It is not in the bylaws. It is in the bylaws that every member gets a vote, and a corporation is a member. The process for that corporation to vote is what your policy is, and you changed it with this notice. You can follow it or you cannot follow it. It'll be legal. The election will be legal, whichever way you decide.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Dabney.
My question would be, is on the voter registrations with which Tappy has, does it have the corporate name and the person who's able to vote? Or is it just the corporation name?
Just a.
We don't make up the roster, we get them from staff.
So would staff have, according to Sunbiz, would the staff have the ability to put that name on the roster as far as the president of that company?
We would be able to look it up in Sundays to see, but they also have to assign somebody
Yeah,
to sign.
The authorization to sign over, go over that.
Correct.
And that's what
They
they
would
get.
have to do the authorization for that person to vote, but we could see that the person who was giving that authorization on Sundays as part of the corporation.
I'm just saying maybe down the road, you just you put the name of the president, and if there's no other name, if anybody else comes in to vote for them, they don't get to vote, period. That gets you out of the catch-22.
And I believe, one of the reasons in the document that was published, that's on the website, that are instructional, down at the very bottom where it does say important, one of the reasons that it says you need to have this in by a certain date is so staff can validate that the person that was authorized and the company that is voting, so that we all make sure that everything is the process of who is voting is proper. For me, I don't like the idea of staff having to do that on the fly right now, today. That was part of the reason that there was a time frame to be able to give staff plenty of time to be able to follow through with what needed to be verified.
So
So,
if I'm understanding right, the corporate representative comes here, if they come today, they'll have the requisite paperwork were supposed to have turned in prior?
Director Lindell, it is the report of staff to the canvassing board that is how it has been in the past. The staff reports, no corporation has actually voted, but that they turned in the paperwork. The question is, did they turn it in prior to 4 p.m. on January 7th, or do they present it this morning?
Okay.
Or this afternoon, whenever they vote?
Okay, I think you answered what my question was, and all I was trying to figure out is, so the corporations knew they had to fill out this paperwork, they just ignored the date due by.
Now, that's not how it's been in the past. If a member came in to vote, it was on that sheet, we would tell them the names of our corporations, and that's how we voted. There was no paper submitted. There was no anything.
But it's been that way since 2008. It's been gone out and noticed that way. It's just never been enforced. Yeah.
Do we know how many, the staff probably can't tell me this on the fly, but do we know how many corporations have voted this way in the past on election day?
We can only tell you those that voted last.
Okay. Well, I don't need to know names, I just need to know numbers. In other words, would it make any difference?
We should
Is-
have voted, but valid, 11 was not.
And that was A through H.
In real elections, my understanding is that they would set these ballots aside as provisionals that didn't meet the criteria. And then, depending if it would influence the outcome, make a decision whether to count them or not. Is that a legal way to do this?
well, I think to the board it's a possibility. I think to the board, what's been presented to you is we either follow the way that it's sort of been just sort of going over the last few decades, this, again, as staff has mentioned, that document's been sent out. I want to point out, staff used the same process that's been used for decades, the same templates that's been sent out for a decade, just changing the dates to be able to make sure that they're on the same time as the election. So there's nothing that's been changed. What has happened is staff has noticed that, we haven't really been adhering to the rules. So to the board, do you want to continue with the way that they had done it in the past, which is if a corporation comes in, allow them to vote? Or because if it didn't come in on time, then they're not allowed to vote? I think that's what's presented to you.
Mr. President, I can actually answer Director Teal's question, though. It certainly is possible for the board to direct its canvassing board to, or direct its staff to set aside corporate votes that policies were not received prior to the deadline, and then to review them to see if they were members of the corporation. That would be essentially how the election had been done in the past. The only difference is your canvassing board didn't do that, your staff did that, and they just did that as a matter of, as a matter of fact. So that's the only difference. That would be the process that it has been done in the past, which would be, not following the important notice of of the situation. So that's why, Mr. President, your point is correct, is that the direction that we need from the board to the staff is how do we conduct the election? And that is, who do we allow to vote, corporation-wise?
Sorry to hog the time, but my understanding is the reason we stood up the canvassing committee was to get away from the staff so there would be no question on what's right and wrong and who gets what to whom and no favoritism and that sort of thing. So my motion is that we move forward with, as it was written, if the corporation had not submitted before the deadline, as the letter was, they not be counted.
Okay. And that's your motion?
That's my motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Don second.
Excuse me, I'll second it.
All right, Don second it. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Okay. Director Dabney is a no. Motion
But if I can
passes.
go one, I would agree with Mark that maybe next year we need to move it up or putting it bold at the bottom or something.
But,
Well,
Director, well, before we have discussion on that, can we get, so I want to get clarity. So the motion passed 5-1 to direct staff as the motion indicated, and that is to follow the notice. With that information, your canvassing board can certify that there are 6 corporations who have met that timeline and would be allowed to vote when their designated rep shows up. We will provide this to Ms. Tappy and her staff so that they know the 6 corporations that have been authorized. The others, anyone who actually shows up after that would not be.
And the one that was passed due, you're going to notify them?
And we'll notify the one that we received, one document that we received untimely. We'll let them know that
That's
we
not that
received.
corporation sitting right there, is it?
I can tell you who that is.
No, never mind. I know who it is.
Okay. All right, understood.
Sorry.
Okay, very well.
Can I add something to that, or can we add something to that?
Well, you can make a statement, but the motion's already been voted on. So right now, the board has decided we're following the rule.
And so that means that from this, your canvassing board has certified these 6 corporations. So the direction to staff is that if any other member corporation shows up today to vote, having not met the notice deadline, they will not be allowed to vote, correct?
Correct.
Understood.
James, did you want to add
I'm just
anything?
gonna put another motion on the table as soon as this one's done.
Is there anything else? We're done with discussion and the motion is already passed. What
we
is
make
it?
another motion.
Mr.
I'd
President,
like to
Hang
make
on
a-
one second.
Mr. President, a director can make a motion at any time. It's
Sure.
proper.
Yeah, yes, sir.
So I'd like to make a motion that we put on that for the staff to put the names of the person who's the authorized payee or person who pays that bill under that corporation. So if they walk in here on that roster, East River Smokehouse is on there and James Dabney's name's on that, you cannot stop me from voting. It's a simple fix. He's the guy who's paying the bill. He's authorized to get that vote. It's a simple fix. If anybody wants to change it going forward, if we have 300 corporations in this county or this area, put them on there. What is it? One extra line on that roster? That person's authorized to get that vote.
Okay, so your motion though is to put the,
The president of that corporation on that roster sheet.
okay,
Are they already on the roster, or is it just the corporate?
hold on one second. We have a motion before we
To
get
you
into
guys.
it. All right, so I have a motion to put the president on the roster sheet. Does it have a second?
That's for next year or this year?
That's for next year.
Oh, for next year?
I second it
All right,
for next year.
Should we not?
hang on,
But
so,
I'm not going against what you
All
guys
right.
have already voted on. I'm just saying, going forward, from this day forward, if the president of that company walks in this business to vote, then, and it's on that roster sheet, then he gets that vote.
okay.
Well, and I think we're gonna have to go further than that. There's some election procedures that we're not gonna do it this way
Whatever
next year.
clarifies it.
Yeah,
yeah.
hang on one sec. 2 things. Doing this is where it gets a little weird. Oh, no, unless we have to clarify whether or not what we do in business gets voted on next year, right? Board business at an annual meeting doesn't get really voted on until 2023, the way we've been doing things.
Well, I mean, directors can take up motions at any time.
Oh,
at
yeah,
any of the
absolutely.
Designated meetings, so you have a monthly meeting, so you can make policy changes.
Right.
But this would be a policy change, this is not a bylaw
Yeah.
change.
Yeah, and I think the annual meeting is not the place to do that.
Correct.
I think the next board is gonna have to take a hard look at this. I think it's a great suggestion, James, and I really think if somebody's name's on the membership certificate, it should be on that roster. So,
Yep.
automatically, and then if the corporation wants to designate someone else to vote other than the president, then that's up to that corporation. But, I'm gonna say I don't think this is the place to do that. I think we do that, for our election procedures next year.
Okay, so for right now, though, I do have a motion from Mr. Dabney that we're gonna put the president on the roster for next year. Mr. Thiel, are you
I
going to
second it.
second? He
next
seconds
year,
this
for next
for next year. So I do have a motion and a second.
Would you be willing to table that as unfinished business for next time,
For the next
for
meeting.
the next meeting?
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I kind of agree, but I agree this, because there may be more stuff we need to look at than just that.
Right, but all I'm trying to do is alleviate the situation that we're gonna have today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Coming in,
Right.
I think
They're
we're,
gonna be really upset that
Yeah.
you're taking their right as a citizen of Santa Rosa County and of our Honeywell water system. You took their right to vote when they are a paying member of that bill. So that's gonna be the repercussion you're gonna face today, whether you notified them or not. Not everybody opens their mail, guys. I don't open my mail.
gotcha. All right, so let's finish that. Either one, Mr. Dunaway, can we have the motion rescinded, or do we just need to either vote it up or down? If we're
Well, the
gonna-
motion has been made and seconded, you're in debate. A motion can be tabled, or a motion can be voted on, or a motion can be withdrawn.
So if we tabled it until the next board meeting, that would be,
That would be proper board action.
are you good with that?
I'm fine.
All right, so
So tabling a motion would require a vote, so I hear that would take some action.
I make the motion, we table that until James's motion until the next meeting,
I'll second.
okay.
whether I'm there or not.
Joe made a motion, Don seconded. We're going to table to the next meeting. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
I table.
Yep. Those opposed say no. Motion carries. All right.
Mr. President, staff will set that on the agenda for your February, unless you wanted it set for your special meeting, which has already been scheduled in 10 days, which you have, the only designated responsibilities at that meeting is to elect your leadership. But you could take it up there, or you could give staff more time to prepare and do it in February.
I believe the board, if the board's good, February will be fine for us to readdress this. We don't need to do it in 10 days, correct?
Yep.
Right.
Okay, that would be it.
We'll so do it.
All righty. Now, anything further? Okay, Dr. Phoebe, the actual candidates for the election.
President, board members, been asked if any of the votes to go through the candidates and the process.
So candidates running for the 2022 election are Joseph Campbell, Michael Kennedy, Doug Larson, Donald Linnell, and Darrell Winchell. This year, there are 4 seats up for election. 3 seats will serve 3-year terms, and 1 will serve a 1-year term. So the voting ends immediately after the board president makes the announcement that voting is open. At 7 p.m., the voting will end. The board president will announce closed voting. The results of the election will then be announced. There were 3 ways to vote this year. You could request an absentee ballot by coming to the office, calling the office, or emailing. An absentee ballot allows you to vote for the 4 candidates of your choice. You could also request a proxy, or you could request a proxy. by coming to the office, calling the office, or emailing. A proxy allows you to appoint a member of your choice to vote in your behalf. And the third way was, of course, you could come and vote in person today by ballot. The first two voting options ran from 7 a.m. November 29th, 2021 to 4 p.m. January 7th, 2022. All absentee ballots and proxies received were dropped in a black block box in the customer service lobby. And the Santa Rosa County Supervisor of Elections, Kathy Lillian, was the key holder, and assisted two other staff members in emptying the box on designated dates. The ballots and proxies were tallied by each, totals verified, and then placed in a locked file cabinet in the secure room. Two staff members validated the secure proxies by verifying the active account status of the appointed member and verified the proxies were completed correctly and signed. The totals were then verified against the total number of proxies and ballots emptied from the box, and all information was presented to the canvassing board and approved. Ballots were left unopened and handed over to Kathy this morning. Her team will process the ballots through the voting machine. All proxies or ballots received after 4 p.m. January 7th, 2022 are invalid. Also, Kathy Lillian, the Supervisor of Elections for Santa Rosa County, along with her poll workers, are assisting in this year's election. And of course, we thank them for their time.
Okay, great.
Mr. President, there is one point that wasn't in the report that I do want to make known to both staff and the supervisor of election. At the canvassing board there, we did make one mistake, and we mistakenly opened a ballot, not paying attention to what was going on. So we know which ballot that was. It was taken in back under the control of staff, and we just made a mistake. It wasn't supposed to.
It wasn't actually removed from the envelope, it's just.
Right, but there is one ballot that was opened, and we know which one it was, and it was us, and we didn't alter it or look at it.
Okay, thank you, sir. Board, any further discussions before I open it up to voting? All right, great. So the meeting is now open for voting. The Board of Directors will reconvene here at 7 p.m. for the election results. So see you at 7.